Holy City Center Radio, it is episode 251, and I am your host, Christian Sanger. Today is Monday, May 6th, 2024. Welcome back. I hope you all had an amazing weekend. Mine was pretty quiet, so nothing really fun or exciting to report back on. So I won't be able to regale you with tales of my amazing life. Some of you probably, thank goodness, just get to the news. I appreciate y'all coming back to listen. I hope you enjoyed Friday's episode, which was an interview that involved the Warrior Surf Foundation. Great organization here in town. If you missed it, just go ahead and go back on your timeline on whatever app you're listening to this on, and you'll be able to listen to it. It was certainly a good one, and I encourage you to support that organization. I will say that although my weekend was quiet, I've got some fun things coming up this week. A couple concerts I'm scheduled to go to. On Wednesday, I'll be over at Firefly Distillery for the first time this year to see Queens of the Stone Age and Royal Blood, which is a band from the UK I really, really like. I'm actually a little bit more interested to see them than Queens of the Stone Age, but also that should be a good set from them. So looking forward to that, hoping, the weather, I haven't looked at the weather, but just hoping it cooperates. There's no rain or anything as it's an outdoor venue. Still shivering from that second evening at the High Water Fest a couple weekends ago. And then on Friday, I believe it is, Sierra Farrell at the Charleston Music Hall. She is an amazing musician, has an incredible voice, a little bit of like bluegrass, country feel to it, but, her own little take on it and her own little style on it. Really incredible singer. I encourage you all to check out some of her music if you have the chance. That's about it on the docket this week. So without any further delay, let's get into the news. Dozens, if not hundreds, of families in South Carolina may be forced to leave the state to continue the care their children rely on as they transition. Yes, it was not a good day at the State House for anybody who is either trans themselves or has a family member or just supports treating all humans the same. No surprise, the South Carolina State Legislature didn't listen to the pleas of the families of the people who are actually affected by their decisions. They also ignored what doctors had said about this topic, and that legislation failed to get stopped by them as it made its way through the House of Representatives along party lines, Democrats voting against this ban, with the Republicans pushing it forward. It does still have to be debated on the Senate floor on April 30th, which is just days before the session ends. Don't be surprised if they try to rush this through. This was one of the first things they took up in January. That's how important it was to the Republicans in the legislature to get this ban for trans kids, making sure that they do not get the health care they need and deserve to have. It has been a priority for them since day one. So don't be surprised if this gets jammed through before the session ends. Specifically, if it's passed, all treatment and therapy for transgender youth would be legally barred in South Carolina. The ban primarily focuses on medications such as puberty blockers and hormone therapy. However, it would really stop just about all types of care related to transgender youth. We've talked about this before, so I'm not going to get into a ton of details, but obviously, this is dangerous and horrible legislation. I know people have different feelings about what types of treatments they personally believe that transgender youth, especially depending on their age, should have access to. And I certainly get that. You wouldn't want a 5-year-old to go through surgery. Everybody understands that. This isn't what this legislation is about. Putting aside the fact that no gender transition surgeries have been done on anyone under 18 here in South Carolina. So the ban is banning something that wasn't even being done. But okay, that's fine if they're not being done here anyway. It seems perhaps it shouldn't be a ban because there are cases, I'm sure, where a 17-year-old, what is really the big difference between someone who's 17 and 18? It's an arbitrary number. Just, we've just associated 18 with being a quote unquote adult. So, but okay, it wasn't happening on anyone under 18 anyway, so the ban doesn't really change that. The problem, the real big problem, of course, is the ban on other treatments. People that don't understand the science, that didn't listen to doctors just to push this, whether it's their bigotry or their fright or their misunderstanding of how things like puberty blockers work. They're not permanent. So if a child decided they no longer wanted to take them, they wouldn't have to. And basically, their puberty would pick back up from wherever it left off when they started taking the blockers. It's not permanent. So, in any event, another dangerous aspect of this bill was an amendment that was added that would prohibit minors from receiving gender transition procedures. Of course, we already knew that part. That's what we were talking about. But it would also require public school administrators to notify a minor's parent or legal guardian of any name changes, pronoun titles that don't align with a minor's sex, or confirming that their gender is inconsistent with his or her sex. So basically, principals, teachers, guidance counselors, whoever it may be, would have to out these students to their parents. Now, I know a lot of parents hear that and say, well, I want to know what's going on with my child. And I can certainly understand that. However, if a child is keeping something like that from their parents, there's likely a good reason for it, even if they are misguided and think their parents won't understand, as a lot of parents end up do understanding and being okay and supportive. But a lot are not. You probably have seen some of the vitriol online that people have spewed towards transgender people of all ages and anyone that supports them. Now, imagine one of those people has a child that is trans and what that would mean and why a child may not want to tell their parents that. It's dangerous to forcefully out children. Teachers and administrators don't have to out a student if they say, if they find out that a student is gay. They don't have to go to their parents and tell them that. They don't have to out students of really anything else. Why this? This is dangerous. It could put children in harm's way. The numbers show that LGBTQ youth, especially those that are trans, their numbers, as far as being kicked out of their homes, is much higher than any other grouping of children. So it's dangerous to add that in there. I mean, this whole thing is dangerous because doctors and parents testified before these committees in both the House and Senate over the last year, talking about, number one, how we said these surgeries aren't even happening, and hormone treatments, when they do happen, only start after extensive consultation with health professionals. People are not walking in with their child and saying, hey, they need to have hormone treatments, they are trans, let's get this started, and then boom, there it goes. They have to have a lot of consultation with different types of doctors, including going for therapy and psych evaluations and things like that. This isn't just a willy-nilly decision that's made. This is something that takes time and is well thought out, and the right decision for each individual patient is made. Now, the other side to this is that these aren't just treatments they want just because. These are necessary treatments for transgender people. Research has shown that transgender youth and adults are prone to stress, depression, and suicidal behavior when they are forced to live as the sex they were assigned at birth. So, by denying these types of treatments, again, treatments that probably, I mean, let's be honest, they're probably, doctors are probably overcautious when they're going through this journey with a patient. They probably delay treatments and taking certain steps more than they would in any other circumstance because of the politics surrounding this. But regardless, they're making these decisions after a lot of research and thought, and it literally can save lives when transgender youth and adults are able to get whatever type of treatment is best for them. Because if you force them to live as something they are not, as I just mentioned, depression, stress, suicidal behavior uh, goes up. When they are allowed to seek these treatments, those issues go down. And as we've discussed, we knew this was likely coming because the majority of the legislature doesn't care to listen to science, doctors, families, the people actually going through these things, and just wanted to score points, whether it was from their base, whether it's from the party, they fighting these culture wars, whether it's, again, their bigotry or whatever it may be. Just a disgusting, if not surprising, a move by one chamber of the South Carolina legislature, and I'm sure the other will soon follow. Speaking of hijinks at the legislature, there was something that was passed that was good until you found out what it took to pass it. So, for the past 3 years, a bipartisan group, so this is both sides of the aisle, a bipartisan group of female state representatives and senators have pushed to lift the state's sales tax on women's hygiene products, such as tampons and pads. The state House of Representatives passed the bill unanimously in early April of last year, but with the session winding down a year later, the state Senate, which has 6 female members, has not even touched the bill, or at least they weren't going to. So it's just been sitting there for a year. Now, the Senate has passed a different tax exemption, though, through the committee process. So while this, women's hygiene product bill just kind of sat there, they decided to pass a similar legislation as far as involving tax exemptions. And this one was for-profit golf course membership dues. That's right. It was more important for the state Senate to make sure they tackled tax exemption status for-profit golf course membership dues. Unbelievable. So the bill was sitting on the Senate floor ready for a vote until Senator Marjorie Bright Matthews, a Democrat from Walterboro, objected to it. And this took place several weeks ago. And she used a procedure that allows a single senator to at least temporarily block a piece of legislation. She took this move, calling this whole for-profit membership dues tax exemption a rich man's tax exemption. And obviously, this is me talking now. It's ridiculous that they would take that up and not this other bill. So within the last few weeks, she and her fellow female senators, which you may have sometimes heard called the sister senators, struck a deal with their colleagues that would use a parliamentary move to pass the sales tax exemption for period products in exchange for Bright Matthews lifting her objection to the golf tax bill if they did that. So silly that they had to use this move and basically barter to have it passed for legislation involving golf club membership dues, which is just ridiculous. But at least they struck the deal and they're getting this passed. Now, for people who don't quite understand, obviously we have a lot of things that are tax exempt, and it for whatever reason, I mean, we can make some educated guesses, I'm sure. That these products were not tax exempt, and it's about time that they are. Some terms you may not have heard of, but why it's important that these are tax exempt. It can help people who, what they call, find themselves in period poverty, and this ensures menstrual equity for all. Fancy ways of saying we're making a product just a little bit cheaper, making it a little bit easier for people who may struggle with being able to pay for such things. Just makes it a little bit easier for them, so they don't have to forego something else or forego these products because they just don't have the money for it. So a rare good move by the legislature. Unfortunately, they had to package it with something not so great. And I mean, it's fine, whatever, but it shouldn't have had to been packaged with something else to get this done, but at least it was done. All right, a lot of updates came out on Friday and over the weekend involving that horrific crash that took the lives of two 20-year-olds. Their names were Lizzie Zito and Ariana Gamber. Uh, there was a lot that when it first happened, we did not know. And as I speculated, perhaps the police had information and they just weren't releasing it. And it seems that's exactly what it was. It turns out they didn't need a whole lot of help, it seems, from the community to get this investigation done. They were able to put it together pretty quickly to find the person responsible. So the Charleston Police Department made an arrest in that fatal hit and run crash. And the person they arrested is a 25-year-old from Charleston. His name is Max David Gentilin. And he has been charged with 2 counts of leaving the scene of an accident causing death. Now, even more details came out, not only about how they tracked him down, but the accident itself. Now, remember, police were called to the scene at like 8:30 a.m. And so a lot of people, myself included, thought okay, this accident must have taken place within a couple hours at most, because if two women were found deceased and hit by a car near a road, there must have been a bunch of vehicles, even 6, 7 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday, that would have seen them. So I'm thinking this must have happened around that time frame. Well, no, as if this wasn't tragic enough, video footage has showed that the collision actually happened between 1:42 a.m. and 1:44 a.m. And these poor girls now, who knows what exactly their status was when they were immediately hit. Did they pass right then and there, or were they alive for any amount of time after that, from 1:42 to nearly 7 full hours later, when someone was actually calling the authorities? So just devastating to hear that, especially when you consider this was a hit and run, and if they were still alive and had a chance to live, if he had stopped and called police right then and there, maybe there would have been a different outcome for one of them, for both of them, maybe not. But regardless, it's hard to know, and it just adds another layer to this tragedy. So they also released the details. They said that the girls were walking north on Morrison Drive when a vehicle veered to the right, left the lane of travel, and struck them. The police then matched vehicle debris that was found at the scene to a damaged dark gray 2010 Acura TL that they discovered in a parking lot nearby, and this led to the arrest. Uh, so the driver, after hitting the girls, continued driving north until he turned at the first right onto Johnson Street and parked at a street parking spot in front of the Morrison Yard apartment complex. Now, all this information is according to affidavits that the local media has now gotten and written stories about. Now, video captured at that apartment complex show him exiting the car from the driver's seat, inspecting his Acura for damage, removing some twigs and leaves from the outside of the car. His car also sustained damage to the passenger side of the vehicle and the front of the vehicle. The passenger side tire was flat as well, and even more devastating, when they found the car, hair and blood were found along the underbody of the car. In that video where he was pulling twigs and leaves out of his car, the video actually had sound, and police say they could hear Gentillon asking himself, "What am I supposed to do?" Later that day, police said he showed up for his shift at Hall's Chop House, the one on King Street. He arrived at work around 10 a.m., so about 9-ish hours after the accident. And coworkers said he was like in a panicked state. And his coworker said his behavior was abnormal and out of character. He ended up leaving work around 1:30 p.m., which was before his shift was scheduled to end, and allegedly told one of his managers that he had crashed his car. He said, "I crashed my car last night, and the police are calling me. I need to go handle this." This is what a manager is relaying to police. And then he repeatedly said, "I fucked up," which is an understatement, for sure. So Gentillon was granted a $300,000 surety bond for those two charges of hit and run with death results, and he was released from jail on May 2nd after making that bond. He is not expected to appear in court again for another month. The Post and Courier reached out to Hall's Chop House to try to confirm some of these details that were in the affidavit. They referred them to their attorney, who, at the time that the Post and Courier went to press, the attorney had not responded yet. And they also wouldn't say if he was still employed at the restaurant or not when they were asked. So, as I said, just a lot more tragic details of this already tragic situation. Family members of the two girls were at the bond court, the hearing, and said their piece. One of the fathers said, essentially that he can forgive an accident, but he can't forgive a hit and run, because, as he said, his daughter is lying there for hours without assistance. And again, there's been no solid, hey, look, they were dead instantly. So even if he did stop, which he should have regardless, of course, there was no saving these women. But we don't know that. Maybe there was. And that's what just those questions just add to this whole thing. So that's the latest. Great job by the police, being able to get this footage, being able to find out what happened and find this person. Who knows what he would have done if they didn't, basically within 24 hours figure out it was him. But just again, just horrible details. And we'll see what ends up happening with this court case. We'll be sure to keep you posted. This certainly has not slowed down the Boeing conspiracy theory train. And hey, it is a little bizarre. A former quality auditor at a Boeing supplier, which is named Spirit AeroSystems. This former quality auditor sounded the alarm about the company's handling of alleged quality concerns regarding the manufacturing of the 737 MAX plane. This gentleman died on Tuesday, the Seattle Times first reported. His name was Joshua Dean. He was just 45 years old, and he died after battling a fast-spreading infection. His death comes after being in critical condition for 2 weeks. The paper said they got that information from his family member, specifically an aunt. So as you may remember, this is the second Boeing whistleblower to pass within the last month. The other, of course, was here in Charleston. So Dean, the gentleman who just died, was being represented by Brian M. Knowles of the Knowles law firm. Knowles was also representing John Barnett, the other whistleblower who died here in Charleston on March 9th from what police said was an apparent self-inflicted gunshot wound, and we haven't heard anything different regarding that case. When his death happened, Barnett was in the middle of a deposition with Boeing in connection with the complaint he had filed against them. Now, Dean, this second whistleblower, although it's against a supplier of Boeing, so not like Boeing specifically, it's against Spirit AeroSystems. There obviously are some similarities between his case and Barnett's complaint against Boeing. Both claimed in statements that retaliation from their respective companies came after they raised concerns over the quality of production. So similar complaints, companies that have a business relationship together, and both whistleblowers pass. Certainly, as I said, is added fuel to the fire for conspiracy theorists. And regardless, it is very coincidental, perhaps, I know some will say it's not, that it happened. So regardless if there's some big thing going on behind the scenes or it just is something that just happened randomly, it is certainly bizarre that these things have taken place. So if any other information ever comes out about those cases, I'm not saying there will. I don't necessarily believe in these conspiracy theories. I'll certainly pass that information along. That'll do it for this edition of Holy City Center Radio. I hope you had a great weekend, a good start to your day here on Monday, and you have a fantastic week ahead. I'll be back on Wednesday. Can't wait to talk to you then. Thank you to Lindsay Marie Collins with LMC Sound System for producing this and every episode of Holy City Center Radio. And of course, a big thank you to Tyler Boone, whose music you hear in each and every episode as well. See you on Wednesday. Until then, good night and good luck.